Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unravel the secrets stitched into the very clothes you're literally wearing right now. Yep, we're talking about the hidden, high-tech world of seams. So here's the plan. We'll start with the basics, then we'll dive into the delicate balance that makes a seam good. We'll take a little tour of the different types you'll find in your closet, see what happens when they fail, and I promise, by the end of this, you are never going to look at your wardrobe the same way again.
All right, let's dive right in. What exactly is a seam anyway?
I mean, we see them every single day, but we rarely really look at them. And that's a shame, because they're not just thread. They are a tiny marvel of structural engineering that decides how your clothes fit, how they feel, and most importantly, how long they last. So the official definition is pretty straightforward. It's a joint where stitches unite material. But think of it this way. A seam is the skeleton of any garment. It is the fundamental building block that magically turns a flat piece of cloth into something you can actually wear. Now, every single seam out there has two really important jobs to do, and they're often in this delicate dance with each other. On one hand, you've got performance, the raw function of the seam. How strong is it? And on the other, you have appearance, the aesthetics. A great piece of clothing finds that perfect harmony between the two. A seam has to be strong and durable for sure, but it also has to look neat, clean, and intentional. So what makes a seam high-performing? Well, first, its strength has to be in sync with the fabric. Here's a fun fact. If the seam is stronger than the fabric will tear first. It also needs elasticity to stretch with you so the thread doesn't just snap. Of course, it's got to be durable enough to survive wash after wash and secure so it doesn't unravel. And finally, and this is a big one, it needs to be comfortable against your skin. It's a really complex engineering challenge hiding in plain sight. Now, this whole engineering puzzle has led to an incredible variety of seam types. There are actually 8 major classes, but we're going to focus on the 3 you are most likely to find in your closet right now. First up is the most common, most fundamental type of seam there is. This is the superimposed seam. The idea here is just beautifully simple. You take 2 pieces of fabric, stack them right on top of each other, and you sew a line of stitches. That's it. It's clean, it's efficient, and it is incredibly versatile. This thing is the absolute workhorse of the garment world. With over 50 different variations, you'll find it forming the side seams of your shirts, your pants, you name it. Its greatest strength is its simplicity. Okay, next up, we've got a seam that is all about strength and durability. This is the lapped seam. The construction of this seam is really what gives it its incredible strength. So instead of just stacking the fabrics, you overlap them, and you often fold the raw edges inside before stitching. This creates multiple layers of fabric all locked together by those stitches. Because it's so tough, this is the seam you're going to find in your most rugged clothing. The classic example? The inside leg seam of your denim jeans. That really distinctive double line of stitching is often part of a lapped seam, and it is built to withstand enormous stress. All right, our third and final type is a little different. It's less about joining big pieces together and more about finishing and protecting an edge. This is the bound seam. Its whole job is basically to be neat and tidy. You take a separate strip of fabric, the binding, and you wrap it around a raw edge and stitch it down. This completely encloses that edge, which stops it from fraying and gives it a really clean, professional look. This seam can be purely functional, or it can be a nice decorative detail. Just look at the neckline of the t-shirt you're wearing. That soft, finished edge is almost certainly a bound seam. You'll also see it a lot on waistbands and sleeve cuffs. But what happens when the engineering of a seam goes wrong? One of the most common failures isn't actually the thread breaking, but something a little more subtle. This is called seam slippage. It's not a rip or a tear. It's what happens when the yarns of the fabric itself get pulled away from the stitch line under stress. It's the reason that favorite shirt of yours might start to look a little worn out, with a visible and often permanent gap right along the seam. So, how do good manufacturers prevent this? Well, they have a whole toolkit. They can increase the number of stitches per inch for a better grip. They can use a wider seam allowance so the stitches are further from the edge. They can even reinforce the seam with tape. Or just make sure the stitch tension is perfectly balanced. It all comes down to careful construction. So now you have the language, you have the concepts to see the hidden quality, or maybe the lack of it, in your own wardrobe. The next time you're shopping or even just getting dressed, don't just look at the color or the fabric. Take a second and really inspect the seams.
Are they straight? Are they puckered? Can you identify what type they are? Because ultimately, a garment is only as strong as its weakest seam, and that's where you'll find the true mark of quality.